All right, now it's time for our core conversation topic. Thank you for joining Misinformation in the Media here. Before we begin, we've got a surprise to tell all of you in this room who chose this. Because you chose this core conversation topic, you have a special opportunity. And this is actually the first session of a professional certificate course about misinformation in the media that the East West Center is offering. And this is the very first time that the EWC is doing this. It actually starts today and has a required session in about 2 weeks during the East West Center Leadership Summit. Now, that doesn't mean that you actually have to do this. You can choose to register and do this. And we're posting that link in the chat right now. So go ahead and take a look at that. Consider if you want to sign up for this certificate course, professional certificate course. And you'll need to do that registration today. It's your first and only chance to do this. And it has to be finished by August. So you do have some time, a couple more weeks there. But do sign up right now. Click that in the link so that you can sign up for it. Now, over to my good friend and wonderful, passionate, and always energetic East West Center leader, Susan Kreifels. She's the program leader for East West Center seminars and media programs, and I've done one myself, and they're fabulous and amazing. So if you're a journalist or if you know someone who is, definitely tell them to sign up and to learn more about the East West Center media programs. Susan Kreifels, she is the absolute dynamo with these things. And so she's the best person to take us into this core conversation about international journalism and media freedoms and disinformation there. So let's go ahead and bring up Susan Kreifels. She'll introduce our speakers for this core conversation, and you will not regret having Susan be on this panel with our great speakers. Susan, take it away.
Ramy, you are way too kind. You are way too kind. You've been a good friend and a colleague for so long, and we can always count on you to be a wonderful, wonderful participant. So thank you so much. Aloha to all of our East West Center Ohana. It's a thrill to be part of this International Alumni Conference. My name is Susan Kreifels. I was a Jefferson Fellow in 1985, and today I manage the Center's media programs. We have close to 5,000 media alumni, an amazing group of accomplished journalists in the US, Pacific Islands, Asia, and around the world. And I am honored to introduce two of our distinguished alumni today to speak on a topic that is overshadowing almost every aspect of our world and lives, and that is misinformation. These two alumni are not only outstanding journalists who have both worked to counter misinformation, they are also committed EWC alumni who continue to support the center and its programs. Nathan Bomey, a reporter for USA Today, participated in our 2012 China-US Journalists Exchange. This year, he also moderated a virtual panel in our EWC Seminars Live series that featured global civil society leaders working to counter hate speech in a program titled On the Front Lines of Hate. Nathan is an accomplished author on polarization and disinformation. In his new book, Bridge Builders, Bringing People Together in a Polarized Age, he dissects the transformational ways in which countercultural Americans are combating polarization. He is also the author of After the Fact, The Erosion of Truth and the Inevitable Rise of Donald Trump, a book about the misinformation age. At USA Today, Nathan tracks how business is changing, covers the automotive industry, and writes about the impact of misinformation on America's political discourse. Before joining USA Today in 2015, he worked as a business reporter for the Detroit Free Press. That experience culminated in his first book, Detroit Resurrected, To Bankruptcy and Back, which tells the inside story of the largest Chapter 9 bankruptcy in U.S. history. Nathan often appears on national TV and radio networks and has won several national journalism awards, including the National Headliner Award and honors from the Society of American Business Editors and Writers. He is also currently a principal scriptwriter on a full-length documentary film on the Detroit bankruptcy. Dilrakshi Handanetti is one of the most committed journalists I know and is passionately dedicated to countering misinformation. The center can always count on Dilrakshi's support. She was a 2009 Jefferson Fellow, has spoken at our 2016 and 2018 international media conferences, and participated in 2 South Asia journalist dialogues. The East-West Center has focused on cross-border journalism programs between Indian and Pakistani journalists since 2015, and Dilrakshi has been a valuable contributor to these important cross-border activities. Dilrakshi is an international award-winning investigative journalist and foreign correspondent. A lawyer by training, Dilrakshi currently serves as the executive director of the Colombo, Sri Lanka-based Center for Investigative Reporting. She was essential in its creation, along with two other colleagues who are all passionate about investigative journalism, which is one of the most important weapons against misinformation. Additionally, she runs an information literacy program to promote information integrity and leads Sri Lanka's first initiative in partnership with Pointer Institute's International Fact-Checking Network and Boom India to train journalists as certified international fact-checkers. Her 25 years in journalism and law include consultant editor of a national daily and weekly in Sri Lanka. Her work has appeared in The Guardian, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, The Humanitarian, and many other international outlets. Thank you, Dilrakshi and Nathan, for sharing your informed perspectives today and for your very important work in combating misinformation. I am so proud that you are our alumni, and I'm handing it over to you. I think Nathan is starting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Just so glad to be here. So glad to be here. It's really a privilege to join you all. This is an incredible organization, and one close to my heart, having done this fellowship in 2012 and stayed in touch with the East West Center over the years, and just recently written a book on bridge building. Bringing people together in a polarized age. The essence of the East West Center is bringing people together across cultures, and so that's why I'm so passionate about this, and so glad to join you. And that actually is the theme of what I want to talk about, which is, as a journalist, I am immersed in misinformation in a sense that it is one of the primary challenges that we confront. And we are, as an industry, often, overwhelmed with false accusations of fake news, false accusations that we are responsible for disseminating misinformation. And so the biggest question driving me right now, the biggest question driving my work is why, if the facts don't matter to so many people, why and how does that affect what I do? Can I just do business as usual as a journalist and expect that somehow the facts that I report as a journalist will actually bridge gaps and fix problems? Because I think ultimately those of us who are in the media got into journalism at least in some small way to make a difference. And so it's kind of depressing when you see how so many people are really not interested in the facts. But I do have faith that the facts can still matter if we deliver them in a very strategic way. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about that, but just a brief story about myself. I'm 37 years old, but my journalism career started when I was 17. So I guess I've been in journalism for 2 decades, which makes me feel old now. But when I started my career, it was actually my senior year in high school, and I was reporting for my local community newspaper. I'm not really sure why the editor of my hometown paper trusted me to do these stories. I only had a little experience at the high school paper, but he trusted me to go to these township meetings, these board meetings of the local township, where they were debating very basic government issues like how to fund public safety and what to do about the local gravel quarry, where they were arguing about expansion and the regulations there. And I'm sitting there as a 17-year-old journalist, with my little yellow pad, in my faux leather work bag, trying to just figure out what is going on here. Why are they debating septic system zoning regulations? I don't even know what a septic system is at this point. So I'm figuring this out on the fly. But I actually ended up staying in that job for 5 years, high school, and then the duration of my college career, and got this really on the ground local journalism experience. And it taught me the importance of 2 things. One, the trusted relationships that journalists develop in the local community, and the difference that those relationships can make in helping people stay connected or reconnect with the truth. And secondly, it taught me the importance of, in a more broader sense, local journalism. Now, you may think that that is a strange thing coming from me as a national journalist at USA Today. But I actually believe that local journalism is arguably the most important aspect of, at least the most important thing that we in the media can do, investing in local journalism to help to begin to restore trust, whether it's in the United States or in the global communities where you may be today. Why? Because we're facing this in America, we're facing a nationalization of the news where Americans have kind of diverted their attention away from their local communities and toward Washington, D.C., where I'm based, or toward the coast or toward these power centers. And this causes them, in many cases, to lose sight of these local connections with local reporters who, in many cases, have lost connections with because they're gone. The first 3 or 4 publications that I worked with don't exist anymore. And that reflects the crisis of the economic crisis that our industry faces. And so what I believe is, the question I ask myself is, how can we expect people to trust journalists if they don't even know one? So what I am encouraged to see, though, is that we are seeing investments by nonprofits throughout the country, throughout the world, in nonprofit journalism, organizations like what Dilrukshi is doing, the Center for Investigative Reporting, because those types of organizations are actually doing nonprofit journalism that doesn't respond to corporate media profit-centered demands, and is reinvesting in the kind of journalism that can restore trust by telling authentic stories and choosing nuance over caricature. Over to you, Dilrukshi.
Thank you. I get to ask you a question, right? So, Nathan, it's really wonderful to listen to you and to learn very quickly about the work that you do. I would like to ask you this very simple question, but I would like a detailed answer for that. And you have been listening to people, and you've been listening to people trying to build bridges with communities. How important is it for people to understand the power that they have in countering disinformation? Because you and I are journalists, a lot of people think it's meant for us, and it only affects us and the content integrity that we are supposed to represent. What about people? What can they do to support this mission?
No, I think it's a really important question because we have gone way beyond a society in which there were a few different trusted sources of information that collected and disseminated and authenticated the facts on a daily basis. It was sort of, if you really look back on it, it was a public service that these large media organizations like mine, maybe, or like Ramey's, at CBS, or just a few different organizations that would actually basically, as a service for you, sort through the facts and tell you what was true. We really can't rely on those organizations anymore because we're overwhelmed with information, and because the media in many cases have been hobbled. And so the question is, how do you as a citizen sort through this overwhelming amount of information and deal with the onslaught of misinformation that we encounter on a daily basis on misinformation on social media in particular? And I think it starts with a couple of things. It starts with recognizing that we have to have a really diverse media diet. You have to intentionally encounter information that disconfirms your beliefs. If all you ever see is information that confirms what you believe, then you're doing something wrong, because that is then going to basically exacerbate this crisis of toxic polarization, this crisis of tribalism, which particularly affects us in the U.S., but is not exclusive to America. And that is the crisis in which you choose community over facts. You choose friends and family or colleagues over the truth. Because when you look at the psychology of this, and we don't have time to get into this, but the psychology of misinformation shows that people often are, if embracing the facts is going to require going against what your community stands for, that you will often choose community over the facts. And that is a real, that what that shows you is why misinformation is so powerful, because there's a human urge to embrace it, and it's very difficult to overcome. And that's why it's not exclusive to one side of the political aisle or the other. Misinformation is something that can affect us all, and that, I think, it starts with recognizing that we're all susceptible to it. And so you have to conclude, you have to embrace the skills of journalism. I think we need to invest in journalism education in our schools and say, you actually, to basically be a productive citizen in this world, you have to actually do the who, what, where, when, why of journalism, think skeptically, and say, that old journalism adage that if your mom tells you that she loves you, double check it out, never trust your mom. And, if my mom is listening, sorry, mom, I'm going to have to check. But that's enough for me. Over back to you, Dorokshi.
Thank you. So, thank you, Remy. It's really, really wonderful to be here and to take part in this conversation. So I'm just going to take this conversation a little bit further from what Nathan actually spoke about. We definitely want to talk about journalism and why misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and malinformation does leave a terrible streak on a terrible impact on the industry that we both represent and that many of us represent. But it goes well beyond as well. It also impacts citizens' lives. It affects people's lives because sometimes we are conveyors of information from various sources, and it can impact a lot of people. Sometimes we do not even know the level of impact that people will be experiencing. I just want to share a little bit of the work that I do and the kind of information atmosphere that this region of Asia has. Well, while I do believe that information literacy is for everyone, and it is essentially for us journalists, but it also goes beyond the use of integrity tools. A lot of journalists end up thinking that we have to learn all the tools and use them, and that's how we're going to combat disinformation and misinformation, which is true. We need to know the tools. But going beyond that, I think there is a simpler tool that all of us can use, and that's called critical thinking. And at the Center for Investigative Reporting, this is what we actually talk about. We talk about people actually asking those questions. As Nathan said, don't trust even if it is your mom. So it doesn't mean that we don't trust our moms, we do. But what we're trying to say is that you just got to be critical, you just got to be analytical, you just want to be questioning. There's so much disinformation and misinformation. And in order to counter, we just need to rely on ourselves first, because journalists with tools can only do so much, and fact checkers can only do so much. But the proliferation of misinformation and disinformation is so much, the volume is so high that you will have to use critical thinking as your biggest tool at hand. Also, because I come from Asia, I come from Sri Lanka, and there are a lot of Asians who come to East West Center and connect with the East West Center. So therefore, I think I speak in a way slightly representative of the interests that we have. And that is in Asia, if not elsewhere, many Asian countries are using the current phenomenon of fake news. Faking it is such a problem, as Nathan said, that, we don't want to be called fake news makers. Obviously, we don't. We want to be people who relay information with integrity. But fake news is a term that we know who coined that. And then beyond that, there are attempts by governments to criminalize information, criminalize news. And that's a huge problem for Asia. And this also takes away our freedom of expression. It allows governments to, there is government overreach, and then there is also the great possibility of curb and control that they can always resort to and control the information space. And also, who stands to benefit? I just want to leave this stage by asking a question that is relevant to all of us journalists, non-journalists, civil society people, all of us concerned citizens. Who stands to benefit from misinformation and disinformation? What's the agenda? Who drives the agenda? If we do not know, then we are at fault. We have to ask those critical questions that Nathan definitely referred to. We have to be continuously asking those questions. What can we do? And as citizens, what can we do? I'm doing very little, I know. I'm trying to work with a group of journalists to promote information literacy. We work with the community. We have gone beyond working with journalists. We also work with civil society actors, concerned citizens to discuss information literacy because that's become such an important thing for our communities to understand and have a grasp of, and also to create a body of knowledge in our part of the world. So if we have these terms like disinformation, misinformation, the glossaries have not come up in most of our countries. So we are working on knowledge products and we give tools to journalists. We also want to be working, we are working with fact-checking organizations. Sri Lanka is yet to register an ISCN certified fact-checking organization. So that's one of our biggest missions, to assist fact-checkers towards certification, not only to be certified, but to be contributing to the information landscape, to make it, to bring back that integrity that we all need, to bring back that content reliance that people need, to discuss issues, to make sure that these tools are not exclusive tools for journalists. These tools are meant for everybody. This understanding, this knowledge base is for all of us to use and all of us to be using. And that's, to me, that seems to be the only way forward, that we all work on combating disinformation. Thank you.
Oh, really, really well said. And we have a lot of folks in the commentary in the chat there, Darukshi, who are, I think, sort of wondering about the same thing that I am, which is you talked about the importance of critical thinking and information literacy, and you've got a little bit of experience, as you mentioned, in terms of actually trying to educate people about it and educate people how to do it for themselves. But how do we teach critical thinking in your experience? And how do we, how do we do that? Because I think a lot of people would say, I am a critical thinker, and so, even the idea that you have to be a critical thinker is something you have to embrace before you can even start critical thinking. So how do you teach it?
Brilliant question, for which I don't think I really have an answer, Nathan, but I'll try. So how can you tell people, kind of start critically thinking? You can't teach people because, as you said, people believe that we are already critical thinking people. I mean, how dare you tell me this, right? But we just need to talk to them. What I do is, I'll explain the trick. What we do is we play games. In our sessions, we play little games to show how non-critical we are, and how trusting sometimes we are when we shouldn't be trusting information. And there are very interesting little games that have been developed by IFCN and various other organizations, and we are localizing them. And we don't tell them, we don't get preachy, that just doesn't work. We just say, like, you care for good information, you care for integrity of information, you care for good journalism, you want to be the trusted journalist, come just have a chat. So these are more conversations, and in those conversations we ask people, so let's play a game. And when you play a game, Nathan, you actually realize how susceptible you are. And the other thing is, we also invite them, using again tools, to walk in the shoes of a disinformant. Now, we believe we are not misinformed. We do believe we are very well informed, and we want to believe that the information that we absorb from various media outlets, we all have our take, right? If I like USA Today, so that's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to like trust it like the gospel. But you just, in order to be able to question, you just need to walk in the shoes of the other person, and that's a difficult thing. And most of us are not willing to walk in those shoes. I'm not, because I want to be walking in my shoes as a journalist. So we try to encourage people to walk in the shoes. So there are little games where you actually peak. You become a huge, social media influencer in that game. And then after a while, what gets questioned the most? You get questioned. So you're peaking, right? You're suddenly a big influencer and you have a lot of people following you and believing in what you say. But beyond that, at a point, it comes crashing down because your integrity gets questioned. And I think this is the golden opportunity for journalists too. So if you value trust, that the public trust that they have reposed in you, and you want to preserve that, there comes a point that you will be challenged if you don't have integrity, if your content does not carry integrity. So, and then you come crashing down. That's the role of the disinformant. We have believed in all kinds of hoax theories in the past many months, whether it's about the pandemic or whether it's about our political dispensations, whether about our leaders, yet it has all come crashing down. Why? Because at some point there will be that integrity test that will be held against you, and only the good will survive. And it's very difficult. I know it's very ideological when I say this, and it's very difficult for people to believe in it. But as you work and you realize how the information industry, how the media industry has been criticized, condemned, but the pandemic opened up, and that gives hope. I mean, and that gives me a lot of hope to believe that we used to surf websites and look for information and probably believe much of it. But there came a point during the pandemic we had to make information choices. There was this information disorder, and we had to make choices. We were making choices. We were going to trusted journalists. There are people we trust. We were going to trusted outlets. We wanted to work with only those who will tell us credible information, share information that is credible, trustworthy, because it can cost lives. You don't want to go to that unknown site. You don't want to go to that untrusted journalist, because you don't know whether to trust that information or not. Because whether you want to be vaccinated, you want to be buying a particular product, you want to be believing in a particular theory relating to something that's critically important to you and your community, you really got to be making those choices. It's, I think, about information choices we make. There is this information disorder. We are always making information choices, and to make good information related choices, you have to be critically thinking. And that's where I would sign off.
I love it. Well, the stakes are high. And I think that, to your point, you talked about the pandemic. And I think what the pandemic has demonstrated is that misinformation can be deadly. This is not, ironically, it's not a game. Although games seem to help, it sounds like, in learning how to be a good critical thinker. But it's not a game. And we are in a situation in which some people are so immersed in misinformation that it may actually kill them. So, before we go to our breaker rooms, I'll leave you with this thought, which is, and then we'll come back afterward and do some questions. The thought that I want to leave you with is, you often will hear that misinformation or information has been weaponized, and it's being used in a lot of cases, certainly in the United States, certainly around the world, to cause division and to oftentimes do actual violence. And so if we are immersed in a situation in which misinformation is being weaponized, my question is not how do we arm up? My question is how do we de-escalate? And so that's maybe how you can frame some part of your conversation in the breakout room. So I think we're going to go do that now.
Thank you.
All right, Nathan and Dilrukshi, an amazing start to this conversation here. Thank you so much. I'm just getting so excited to get into the breakout rooms here. But, talking about how misinformation is weaponized, opinion is also easily weaponized. You were talking about how it's very important to see how things have happened with the pandemic. Here in Hong Kong, there's been talk about fake news laws with the protests that have happened from 2019, and there's been a slide in terms of democratic standards and authoritarianism rise with China just on the back door here, mainland, of course, fake news laws in Singapore, and talk about that elsewhere. Very concerning. I definitely want to hear, I'm sure we all want to hear how we can try to, if not push back, how to just make sure that, as you guys talk about, critically think. So we know what we're seeing. As a journalist myself for the past 20 years, Dilrukshi, you said, we think we're critically minded. Now I'm wondering, how critically minded am I even? So I'm looking forward to those conversations. We're going to go for breakout rooms right now, and I'm going to walk you through how we're going to get to that. First off, hope you learned something interesting there. Hopefully it's lit the fire like it has with me with these conversations. In just a second, you'll see a black box pop up on your screen, and that'll say the words "Join the conversation." It'll look something like this on your screen. The breakout rooms right there at the top with the red arrow pointing to it. It'll ask you to confirm your video and your audio. Basically, it's all set. Just click "Let's go," and it'll send you to the breakout room. Now, when you're in the breakout room, you'll only have up to 6 people in them, 6 new friends. They're totally random, not chosen, but introduce yourself and then start a conversation about what Nathan and what Dilrukshi and what Susan have all talked about. When you're in the breakout room, you'll see questions appear on the screen that'll guide your discussion, what's happening in your own community, what's working, what's not, and what's possible. You'll also see a countdown on your screen. You'll have 15 minutes. It'll go by very fast, so definitely get your ideas and your opinions in sooner than later. And then once we're close to it, close to the end, you'll get an announcement that they'll be closing. One housekeeping note: sometimes people get kicked out of these. Remember the number of your breakout room or another person inside your breakout room. The reason for that is because if you get kicked out, then you can tell one of the EWC staff, hey, I'm in room number 5, or so-and-so was in my breakout room, and they'll find that room and they'll send you back. All right, enough of me speaking here. Let's go ahead into those breakout rooms, navigate into them, and then we'll see you for some terrific conversation over the next 15 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone, out of your breakout rooms. Hope you had a good, short, fast discussion. I'm sure it ended faster than you thought it would. But we're going to go into the Q&A now because we have a lot of questions in the Q&A chat, and you can go ahead and put your own questions in there. You can also upvote a question if you really like it. So we're rejoined with Nathan and Dilrukshi here. One question that I really liked, continuing off what you had talked about, Dilrukshi, earlier. Let's see. Kelly Matsudara over at the East West Center. She asked, do you have a link to the critical thinking game for us to try out? I think a lot of us are probably thinking, how do we make sure that we're good critical thinkers? Tell us more about this.
Okay, so I will definitely share with the link to the game with the East West Center. So that's something I could do right now. Maybe I'll try to look for it and add it in the chat. How do you play? Is that the question,
Yeah.
Remy?
It's really quick. How do you do it?
Okay, you just get 5 minutes to play it. You just start by walking in the shoes of a disinformant, and so all the questions that we have generally we just shut down. Right, we go into shutdown mode of critical thinking people, and we just enjoy the moment, and we share information that is not true, and the more eyeballs we get, we enjoy that. So we have this real moment in the sun where we are peaking as social media influencers, and then after a while people start asking questions, and at a point you're very successful, you're very happy, and then people start asking questions, oh but that didn't add up, kind of thing. And then in the next 2 minutes you keep coming down, and then you end up at the lowest of the lowest, so to say. And it kind of shows that disinformation can only survive for a particular period of time.
And the idea, disinformation also leads to discrediting once you
That's
come off
right.
that high.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a popular question. Another popular question is about citizen journalism. Nathan, let me send this to you first because you were talking about it as you were a cub reporter when you were 17 years old in the troughs there. Tell us more about the role of citizen journalism. Now, Whitney Chan has gotten 5 upvotes for this, and she is coming at it through the lens of Myanmar here. Journalists are much in danger, and most information journalists are in danger, and most information now depends on citizen journalists. Share your thoughts on citizen journalism there, and then Dilrukshi, I'll also ask you to answer the same.
Well, I think like a lot of professional journalists, I have feelings on both sides of the fence. So on one hand, I feel very strongly like citizen journalism is a powerful and important element of our information society. I mean, you only have to look at the video of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis, Minnesota in May of 2020, which was filmed by a teenager who now has won the Pulitzer Prize, a special commendation from the Pulitzer Prize, the highest honors in American journalism, for filming the murder of George Floyd. And so that was citizen journalism at its finest. And I think you can argue pretty convincingly that had she not filmed that incident, that maybe that we never have this international and national reckoning with race and ethnicity and police violence in America. So there's that. On the other hand, I think it's impossible to have a discussion about the idea of citizen journalism without having a discussion about how so much of it is counterproductive, and so much of the the fact that we have given a platform to anybody and everybody puts us in a situation that unfortunately compromises the truth. And oftentimes, I think what's so difficult is that we, I was talking about just the other day to my family about an elderly relative who, who is having a difficult time, and falling prey to a lot of misinformation. And I said, well, the problem is that it's only recently that we have started to encounter so much information on a misinformation on a daily basis. 20-30 years ago, it was much more difficult to encounter conspiracy theories and misinformation. It was out there, but it was much more difficult to come into counter, to have a face-to-face encounter with it. And so I think that what that tells us is that it's pretty easy to fall prey to it, because if it's in the feed and you're programmed to trust whoever is giving you the information, because you always could trust them before, it's difficult to draw a distinction between the citizen and the professional. And so it just illustrates how important it is what Delrukshi has talked about, critical thinking, and I feel strongly that we need to do a better job in our schools to say, okay, maybe those of us who are adults are a lost cause. I hope not. But if we are, I think we can agree that our students, that our kids are still forming their worldview, and maybe there's still time to help them navigate this dynamic information world we're now faced with.
Yeah, I just chiming in really quick, and then Direction, please chime in too. The idea that everyone has a cell phone, we can all be a newsmaker, but depending on how we spin it or not, we become an opinion maker, right? And then it requires rigor on training and responsibility, and to your point, education, to make sure that we don't take a video and say, oh, this is what it really is, when it was something else. Because the George Floyd video could have been spun someplace else, but there was also the words trust but verify that this actually happened. All right, I'll stop. Darakshi, please chime in.
Yeah, so I think learning can cut both ways, just like the mobile example you showed, Remy. It can be used by anybody. It can be, you can be a content creator. We are technically talking about content creators and what kind of content we can put out there. So I think citizen journalism has given an opportunity for a lot of other people to engage in what we may otherwise would have called professional journalism. So there are people, and I never really want to say that they do not contribute. I definitely think there are so many countries in this part of the world, particularly, who actually do great blogging, who are actually leading this discussion about misinformation, disinformation. That's also because if you're in a nonprofit and you're not, if you don't have to follow the dictates of your ownership, and there is that freedom also that's allowed. Having said that, mainstream isn't dead. And I think for those of you who want to believe that the mainstream is dying, I don't think so, because mainstream is probably going to get checked, verified. And I think all of us are going through this, litmus test of being checked for our nature of being able to trust, and we have to always now earn the badge of being being one of the trusted partners, being one of the trusted journalists. And therefore good journalism has got a second breath, I would say, because it has created an opportunity for good journalism to showcase its own worth and value in a situation where there is so much disinformation. And also, if you're just using your mobile phone, and if you are interested in being that content creator, what are we talking about? We're also talking about algorithms, right? Algorithms determine what you're going to see and where we're going to go. I'm definitely in my own echo chambers when I rely on that too much. But real journalism is about perspectives. It's about having people who contradict you, who've got a different opinion. So that space needs to be defended. One of the biggest ways of, countering disinformation, I also think, is to present other people's views and create a platform where everybody can come together. I don't need to agree with you, Remy, or with Nathan. I can have a view of my own, and you can have a view of your own. We also need to be decent about it. We need to be relying on facts about it. But having said that, all three of us have the same opportunity, the same right to present our viewpoints. And when I hear that you have a differing viewpoint, only I can understand there is something beyond my echo chambers. Then only I can see Nathan's book is creating ripples, because it has impact on people. It means so much to people to understand what it means to be an empowered citizen, contributing to social cohesion, keeping peace at your community level, and never to underestimate the value of the citizen. Again, all of us want to be citizen journalists today. We just think we feel the mobile in our hand and we create a story and we share it, but there is great responsibility at that moment of sharing, and the
Absolutely.
creation is to be responsible. Sharing is to be a responsible thing.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely, absolutely. I want to get to the next question, but just chiming in on this, I was told once that if people on one side all love your story and people on another side all hate your story, you've done a bad job. And then another way to look at it is if everyone on both sides of your story hate your story, you've done a good job
Yeah.
because that means you've shown both sides. But so I guess we also have to think about that because I'm trying to put myself, in the other person's boots or shoes, right? And sometimes it's so difficult because you feel, oh, defend something standards here, but then there's another story where other people believe in certain things there too. So it really shouldn't be necessarily our place to take a stand, but to let other people come to that decision. We're running out of time, but sorry guys, I'm going to push for one more question if you don't mind, because we just have so many good ones here. This is a positive one that we can end on. Encouraging discussions rather than attacking people who are at different ends of our political spectrum. Ramnath Chandrasekhar asking this, and it's been upvoted the most. We'll end on this one. How do we make this positive? How do we make sure that we don't tear people down? Because let's face it, it's easier to attack someone and say, "I don't agree with you." But how do we say, "Hey guys, let's talk. Let's not fight."
Yeah. Well, I can take that because not to give a very shameless plug for my book, Bridge Builders, but that is actually the essence of my book, which is I wanted to write about people who weren't accepting the status quo, people who were trying to bring people together despite their differences, whether it's politics, race, religion, class, or culture. People who understand that the only way to sustainably bridge differences and to gain that respect is to form relationships between people who look differently, think differently, vote differently, or live differently. And I think what I found, at least when it comes to journalism, because I have a whole section in this book about how we as media can actually contribute to this bridge building challenge that we have as a society, is that we can be bridge builders in the sense that journalists were often viewed as these unemotional, sort of removed participants in our democracy, or if you're not in a democracy, in your culture. But I feel really strongly that we can tell stories authentically when we choose nuance over caricature. I think people, just to Ramey's point, they understand we're going to write about conflict. We're going to have tough conversations. You can't have a democracy without conflict. That's going to be there. If you don't have conflict, that's an authoritarian government. And so we understand conflict is essential to who we want to be. But the question is, how do we prevent the conflict from becoming a fire that destroys everything around us? Or what we want the fire to be a fire that creates. And I think it starts with, in journalism, avoiding sensationalism and choosing nuance. Again, because I didn't want to write a book like this without training the lens on myself as a journalist in our own industry to say, yes, I will always defend journalism against false accusations of fake news. But I also believe that we have, in some ways, there have been missteps, and we have contributed to this toxic polarization that we're emerged in. And so I think it starts with very basic, on-the-ground relationships between local journalists and the public, and saying, you can't really expect people to trust, again, like I said earlier, you can't expect people to trust journalists unless they know one. So we can't sit in our newsrooms and hope that, and write the facts, distribute the facts, and hope that people will trust it. We have to get out there and form relationships. And I think that we can have difficult conversations because conflict is okay. It's how we deal with it that matters.
I like that. Maybe your next book, Conflict is Okay.
Nirakshi,
Let's wrap it up with you. Your thoughts on this?
Okay, I think Nathan said a lot, and I think he spoke for both of us. He's also talking about communities and the role of communities. So to go back to your question, Remy, How would you want to be treated? If I invited you home, how would you like me to treat you? Yeah, this is about essential respect. These are about our values as well. And, the conversations we used to have, we had conflict, we had disagreements. We disagree. I mean, we have every right to hold our opinion and to disagree. The dinner table is also a conflict zone when we talk about different things. So just think about that when you, I mean, definitely my dinner table is very much a conflict zone. Sometimes we discuss politics and we completely disagree. My parents used to always disagree, and that's okay. And that's actually healthy because that's also about perspectives. And I think we have to create space for perspectives. We have to create, we need to believe in some level of, place some value on our interrelationships. I don't want to be online. I've gone offline oftentimes when I get trolled. So I don't like it. Why do I want to do it to both of you? I mean, I know you both, but why would I want to do that to people I don't know as well? I can disagree, but show you respect.
Yeah, absolutely. When people tweet at me, sometimes they're not very happy with things I write, but or broadcast. But it's a story. I try to de-escalate, and I say, one, I take a break. I don't answer immediately because I get quite upset. But then an hour or two later, then I say, "Hello, friend." Friend being the operative word. Why are already de-escalated, and I say, "Thank you for your thoughts." If I want to. Most of the time, I don't reply. We all know never reply as journalists because that spins out. But I try to de-escalate, and I appreciate that. With that, I will stop talking because I know we're quite over, and probably the other stage is already looping back in. But I want to thank everyone for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them, but clearly this is a passionate issue for all of us here. Nathan and Dilrakshi, thank you so much for your expertise. Super, super great. Nathan, I'm going to look out for your book. I know you didn't mean to plug it. He hasn't asked me to plug it for him, but I'm interested in reading it.
Thank you.
And I want to learn more about the CIR Dilrakshi, so please continue to tell us more about that in the public chat as well. All right, everyone, we're going to send it back to the Core Conversation main stage. And so we're going to continue on with the Innovation Fellow videos here. That's going to be the next thing that we're going to be doing here. And we're going to be doing, let's see, this video that we're going to be showing right now. We're going to be going to our core conversations with a bit of inspiration. And this inspiration is coming to us from the East-West Center Innovation for Sustainable Development Fellows. This is all about sustainability here. These fellows are young professionals from the East-West Center, and they're under the age of 40. They work in anything but from the arts to the environment to education to health, as well as disaster resilience. We've also included a couple of their stories at the end of our core conversations to just show how they're changing the world. All right, so I like to end this on a positive note. So let's take a look at this video from our Innovation Fellow. All right, and I've just been told that everyone has to navigate back to the main stage first, and we'll show the videos over there. And how do you get back to the main stage? You just go to the hamburger button just up on the top left-hand side of your screen. It's under that little red sign that says Event Navigation. And you want to click onto the red banner that says 2021 East-West Center, East-West Center Association International Conference. So go ahead and click on that now. We'll give you a couple moments to get back to the main stage, and we'll show everyone the video together at that time. All right, go ahead and hit the hamburger. We'll see you on the main stage right now. Thank you.